Hey, podcast friends. This is Dr. Steve Hewlett with the podcast Simple Healthy Choices for Weight Loss, where every week we help people who have realized that as their health has been declining over the years, the number of medications they are being prescribed is increasing. We want to help you reverse this health path so you can live the vibrant, pain-free, and hopefully medication-free life you deserve to live. If you'd like even more information on this topic, you can go to Amazon or Audible and pick up my book, Your Plate is Your Fate. And if you think my book helps you on your new health path, please tell your friends and leave a review where you purchased it. Hey, welcome back, podcast friends. And in this episode, we are going to be interviewing Angela Jenkins again. And we've interviewed Angela one time before, back in September of 23 on episode number 42. And at that time, Angela did not have her book written and out, and now it is both written and it's out to purchase. So first, who Angela Jenkins is, she's been a registered dietitian for 32 years in both conventional and consulting settings. During her years as a pediatric dietitian and in functional nutrition, she became intrigued by the confusing outcomes of some of her clients and began that deeper dive into the root cause to find an explanation. This led her down the path of understanding how our mismanaged industrialized food system model influences people's health quite negatively in America. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, Angela, thank you so much for joining us again.
Well, thanks for having me.
And tell us, so how have things been going since your book's been out? Oh, by the way, this is her book. For those of you who are actually watching this on YouTube or one of the videos, it's called Destination Real Food, Navigating Our Food System and Restoring the Soil to Improve Health. And so we are like-minded in this and just two different views. So
right.
Just open up with what, is there anything hard pressed on your heart that you want to get out to make sure that everybody knows at least this one thing? Just to start with.
Yeah. Well, I think my book title says it all for me.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's a very simplistic representation of a very complex problem. So, looking at food systems for me has been perhaps the most, I don't know. I mean, it's like the deeper you go, the deeper you have to go in order to understand more and more and more about it. And I have to say that even after I wrote the book, you probably can relate to this, Steve. You write your book and you're like, oh, I could have put that in there too. Oh my gosh. And then I learned about this other thing that, is a big deal. And it's just, where does it end? Because our food and our food systems are quite literally making us ill. And unless folks understand what those influences are, there's no way to make good choices. There's just not. Just like
on your book title, Destination Real Food. It's like, it's weird that we actually have to talk about real food anymore. I mean, this is something we never had to talk about in the, since the history of, time. And now all of a sudden, and then the recent era within the last 5-6 decades, real food, people are totally confused on what real food is.
Right.
Like we're the only animals that have to be told what to eat. Every other animal knows exactly. And we used to until, well, maybe you can tell us why we get so confused now.
To be honest, sometimes I'm confused too.
I know.
It's like the blind leading the blind. And I think I actually called the chapter that. But, there's so much misinformation. And there is what I call a lack of food transparency in America. If what was put on the label actually provided you with all of the information you needed in order to be an educated consumer, it would be a very different situation. But it's not. And in fact, the things that are not on the label are perhaps more damaging than anything else. It's the stuff we can't see that we don't know that's causing problems. Pesticide residues in foods.
Right.
And I'm outside and I feel like my throat's getting allergies this time of year. There's other things in foods, even in packaging, that people are just unaware of. And frankly, you can't ask enough questions in order to know, which is why I consistently promote understanding where your food is coming from, so that if you're not growing your own food, that you can at least talk to the farmer and ask questions. And it doesn't mean that you're going to have 100% assuredness, but at least you have a higher level of assuredness associated with what you're eating, which, if you're going to the grocery store, you don't have that option. It's just, It just doesn't exist. even if you're choosing organically, there are things that could still be in your food.
Yep. I know.
How do you know?
And I hate it because the food manufacturers know what they're doing, and that's why they're trying to tell everybody, fat's bad, carbohydrates are good. Eat our food. That's actually what's causing everybody to have horrible, horrible illnesses and death and amputations and everything is eating this kind of food. And they know because they'll put stupid things on the outside that they know is supposed to be healthy, like made with real avocado oil. And then you turn over and look at the active ingredient list, and the very first thing on there is some kind of seed oil, soybean oil or something like this. And avocado oil will be the very last ingredient on the bottle, but at least they put a drop in there.
Well,
and I hate the way they advertise the people that way.
Technically, it's accurate, and that's the thing. And they're getting away with it because we have uneducated consumers. So even understanding, I was listening to a podcast the other day. Us podcasters listen to podcasts, and it was fascinating. And I wish I could remember the doctor's name, but it was posed to her. Oh, goodness, I hate to quote people, and I can't tell you who they are. But the three options were: would you prefer to, which is the worst? If you're eating a lot of junk food, or if you're a smoker, or if you're eating a lot of seed oils, which is the worst one of those three? And the answer very much surprised me from the perspective of this scientist, because it was the seed oils. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is that the seed oils, the half-life is something like 2 years before it actually breaks down in your body. And I thought, well, gosh, at least maybe smoking. Oh no. The oxidative stress associated with smoking. And then, as we know, with the industrialization of our food, all of the additional, junky, I'll just call it junky stuff that we eat is something entirely different. But the seed oils was something that gets, incorporated within your cell structure and takes a very long time to get rid of. And I was super surprised by that, but I appreciated the message because I'm not sharing it with other people. So.
And that doesn't even include all the chemicals it takes to get the oils out of these vegetables and out of these seeds. I mean, they've got all kinds of high temperatures and these chemicals they put on there. And then you have to go to the omega-6 and omega-3 ratios with the vegetable and seed oils, where a normal good ratio would be like maybe 3 to 5 of the omega-6 to 1 omega-3. So you have a little bit of anti-inflammatory and a little bit more of or inflammatory. But now with these seed oils, it's like 50 to 1. I mean, you have so much inflammatory prostaglandins going on. So it's causing inflammation all over our bodies. Yep. And I hate that they put seed oils in everything. If you're getting anything fried outside, chances are it's going to be a soybean oil or safflower oil or canola oil or one of these other horrible oils.
Yeah, most restaurants.
And I tell people, when you go to the health food store, don't assume because you're at a health food store that what is on the shelf is healthy. Flip that label over and start looking at those ingredients, because 9 times out of 10, anything that's processed, period, has some of these things in it. And so you might be making a little bit better choice, but you're still getting exposures to these things. And it's just, it's degrading our health substantially. So.
Oh, yeah. So what do you recommend? What do you think? What should people do who really do want to eat healthy? What do you recommend they do as far as obtaining their food?
Obtaining food, do it as local as possible. Ask a ton of questions and figure out where your food's coming from, how it's raised, how it's grown, and gravitate more towards the things that you have some charge over.
You talk about the destination real food. Yours is really also about the soil, the nutrition that's in our soil, how it's just not there anymore. So even if you go somewhere, maybe, or especially maybe I always think of a grocery store when it's organic, certain things. It's like, do you think that soil, where those things come from, are those still good? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, do you think that soil is very good, or is it really not?
It's better, but I think the organic standard has been compromised tremendously, which means that, unless it involves some sort of regenerative properties with the soil, the potential is that you're still not getting a great, you may not be getting pesticide residues, but you're still not getting the best option possible.
As you should be.
I'm going to figure out my own allergies too, with liver detoxification. That's another story.
So when we look at the food now that we do have, even if you're trying to eat healthy, do you think we're still getting all the nutrients we need, or what do you think about supplementing? All these supplements are out there, because I know there's a lot of issues about those also.
Yeah, and they're not regulated by the FDA. Unless somebody gets sick, basically you're at the whim of whatever they put in there. There are third-party reviewers of supplements too, which which I appreciate because at least you have a place to go to check and see, well, is there really actually this much vitamin D in this?
Right.
And fish oils in particular, because, and I did put this example in my book with regards to supplements, that fish oils, which is the number one prescribed supplement in America, the majority of the fish oils are actually rancid before they hit the market. So they're actually having the opposite effect on your health as what your intention is. And so understanding and knowing where to find that information is super important, because, you know, what your intention is may not be what's happening.
So where do you find that information? We have people go look.
There's a number of third-party reviewers. It's a pretty inexpensive. I mean, if you're serious about wanting to improve your health, just to kind of backtrack for just a second, I do not believe anymore, but there are so many exposures that we have that like our parents did not get exposed to. I mean, I'm 55 years old, and for the longest time as a dietitian, I really thought I could eat well. I could eat well in order to my health. I really don't believe that anymore. And that is because we have had so many more exposures to things environmentally and otherwise that even our parents were not exposed to. So it's a very different scenario for them than it is for us. And then if you look at subsequent generations too, I mean, looking at what their bodies are having to handle is yet another layer of, okay, we've got the industrialized food system going on here. And are we recognizing the total body burden of what our bodies are being exposed to? And I don't think we are.
Right.
But how do you measure that is the question. And I don't really know how to measure that. Besides that, if people are continuing to remain ill, then that should be our measure. And we all know that the disease rates are still skyrocketing. It doesn't almost pick one, with exception for, I think some of the cancer rates are actually diminishing, but I'm not.
See that.
A few.
That's right.
But, I mean, so there's these three basic things that influence our health. You've got oxidative stress, you've got inflammation, and hormonal imbalances. And I would argue that the hormonal imbalance is related to the other two, but.
I definitely think so.
How do you know? I mean, that's the big question. And if you look at people's health, is your health improving? Do you have more diagnoses at our age than you did when you were 30? And the answer is most likely. But, we have to also look at how those diseases are being defined as well. And some of which I would have to argue that I don't agree with, but that's just me.
That is just you.
Well, hypercholesterolemia being one of the big ones. I'm like, we have to stop this.
That is such a lie. I can't stand that. And then they're putting all these people on these statins that are killing everybody because they have no purpose whatsoever. And because they make everybody think that you're supposed to stay away from cholesterol and fat, going back to what you said about our hormones. I mean, cholesterol is the basis of a lot of our hormones,
Absolutely.
Testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. I mean, it's the basis of all that. So I do think that if people are actually doing what they're being told, which is a lie, the only reason they want people to think all that is because they want people to continue to eat their food. That's carbs and vegetable and seed oils and sugar and high fructose corn syrup. That's what they want people to eat. And that is what's killing us. It makes me sick.
I agree with everything you just said, and I would even add cholesterol is a precursor for vitamin D, which is, how part of that hormonal balance.
Yes. And
a lot of people, I read an op-ed, well, actually today, always reading an op-ed today that suggested that, part of what happened during COVID could have been mitigated with, statin drugs was a great setup for low cholesterol levels and people to not be able to manage vitamin D levels, which clearly showed.
Oh, yeah.
That it was, it's partially how people's immune systems help to fight off viruses. So.
Right.
Yeah. Magnesium, vitamin D, we were giving it to everybody who came in through COVID. I mean, everybody was low on vitamin D. And then they go in and screw things up because they tell everybody that sun's horrible for you and get out of the sun and put all these sunscreens on you, which scary. Is also a huge lie. And sunscreen, those are just more chemicals you're putting in your body. We are bombarding ourselves with chemicals, either what's around us that we're inhaling, what we're putting on our skin and makeup or anything else. But the worst is now we're eating all these chemicals. I mean, our bodies are freaking out trying to figure out where's the food? It's like, where's the nutrition here? And
right.
I feel sorry for our bodies.
They work very hard.
That's right. They work very hard to keep us
functioning
Well,
somehow.
as healthy as possible with the crap we put in it.
right, which goes back to that original question, do we need supplements? And I'm back to, I believe that we do. And like I said, I've spent a lifetime believing otherwise. And I don't think I actually answered your question, which is there are third-party reviews. Anyone can sign up for consumerlabs.com. I think a subscription is like $60 a year. I mean, it's pretty inexpensive. And what you'll find is that you'll keep looking up supplements after supplement, after supplement, after supplement, because there's no other way to know what's in them. I mean, unless you have a lab, down the street that you can call somebody and say, hey, is this actually what's in it?
So if you click on consumerlabs.com, then what do? You just put in whatever supplement you're looking for, and they'll tell you what are some good companies that you can trust, or
they do their own reviews of products. So they'll tell you, and they leave in test for like heavy metals and things like that. Oh, my dog's going to come visit. Go lay down, babe. Yeah, no, you get go on the street. They test for different brands. They don't test all of the brands, but they test a lot of the brands so that some of the more popular ones, if they have a large portion of the market share, they will test those products. So, and you'd be surprised about some of the stuff that's on there. I mean, some of the more heavily used supplements, I wouldn't do them.
Well, no, I think that sounds great.
And you brought up fish oil. Do you know where a good place is for fish oil? Have you researched that one in particular to know that this is a good source or this isn't? Because I know we're telling everybody increase your omega-3s because you get nothing but omega-6s out of processed food.
I did. In fact, it's a brand that I just finished up on, and I can't remember the name of it, but I'm helpful.
Oh, that's just great.
You're very good.
But, I honestly think everyone should be on. I mean, there's other third-party reviewers. I just use them most frequently because they do, purposefully go and look at the most common brands.
Yeah.
So it makes it nice and easy. And they do it in a very user-friendly form. Once you get in there, you're like, oh, this turmeric doesn't actually have turmeric in it. That's nice to know.
I know. Isn't that crazy? I've heard that about a lot of things where it's inside a bottle, and when they actually test and find out there was not even a trace of it. They didn't put anything on the label.
Vitamin D supplements are horrible. Fish oil is horrible. The problem is that at least for me, from some of my clients, they'll come to me like, is this supplement okay? I'll look at the bottle, and it's not a common brand. So I'm like, I can't tell you whether it is or it isn't. There's just no way to know.
And then, like our local health food store here that we always go to, you'll go, well, I went to get fish oil the other day, just like 60 capsules. I don't remember the strength or anything of the fish oil. And it was like $35.
It's expensive.
That's very expensive. And it's like, if we're going to spend that much money, we want to know if this is really working.
Right.
And
just like that, as far as the oils, knowing that really the only good oils are going to be like fish oil if you get a good place, olive oil, coconut oil, and avocado oil. But that's something that we didn't even learn until we listened to a podcast on the olive oil, because we were doing it wrong. With olive oil, it has to be in glass, not plastic. It needs to be in as small a container as you can buy it in because it goes rancid, like you said, and keep it away from the heat. And I know a lot of people who keep it in a big plastic bottle right next to their stove. It's like, you're doing everything wrong.
We were.
We were.
Yeah, and
not anymore.
You're doing something good.
Yeah.
I tell people, if you're going to cook and you want an oil, use the avocado oil. I mean, and it is more expensive, but it's got a much higher smoke point. Or gravitate to the butters, grass-fed butter.
Yes.
Which, doesn't volatilize the same way. So it doesn't have the same risk associated with doing it that way. So,
right.
Or the high temperature cooking.
We use a lot of butter, real butter.
I do too. It's delicious.
It is.
Makes everything better.
It does.
Yeah. If you want your kids to eat vegetables, put butter on it.
Right. So I'd like to, if we can, just kind of go back for just a second, because we were talking about, agricultural practices. The regenerative agriculture and organic food products lots of times have a higher phytochemical content than a lot of other foods. So like if something's conventionally grown, then it's not going to have the same amount of nutrition in it. It's just not. And you have to look at it as it's just like Like if you don't put pesticides on something, what happens is then the integrity of the plant structure changes, and that integrity of the plant structure is associated with those phytochemicals.
Mhm.
So when you look at it that way, then you start thinking about stress for the plant as a good thing, which, sometimes for human beings, stress is a good thing because, we change when we're stressed a little bit or we see things a little bit differently. Plants are the same way. You just want to make sure that you're allowing for kind of Mother Nature to do her thing, so to speak, without pesticide residues and that sort of thing, because it does change the chemical composition of the plant itself. And that's the important thing to understand there. So if there are places that are close by, folks that are within, your region, I say go and support these people. That's been a strong message of mine for a long time.
Right.
Because anyone who's doing that correctly is who you want to support. And not only are you supporting that farmer, you're supporting community because you are supporting that farmer, and you're actually creating a better setup for the planet too, because that's how this was managed back in the day. It wasn't managed with conventional agriculture, where one of the big concerns now is that everybody lives downstream, and if you get a heavy rain, where's that all going? Well,
Right.
the Gulf of Mexico, in the Midwest.
That's right.
And I don't think a lot of people equate their personal food choices to what goes on in the Gulf of Mexico, but that's like legit.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah, even the seafood that we get now. Our oceans are contaminated, and we have to be careful of all that. And there's just so much. You kind of get to a point where you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Yeah, it really is.
It is.
It's all related though. Yeah, it really is.
And you were talking about phytochemicals, and that's what I want people also to know. Phytochemicals are those are chemicals on plants, but there's phytonutrients that are actually nutritious for your body, but there's also phytotoxins, also the chemicals. Plants don't want to be eaten. I mean, they need to survive just like we do. And so there's all kinds of chemicals, phytic acid and oxalate crystals and lectins and all these things that the plants actually produce to make you sick. They want to make animals sick so they don't get eaten. So you got to be careful when you're eating them, not just all the pesticides and all the crud that the manufacturer put on it, but just plants in general. Some of them are good to eat, but don't go overboard on it. You can really get an abundance of these phytotoxins as well.
So you can definitely. And unless you're aware, who was I talking to today? I was talking about gooseberries, but the tart, like rhubarb and things like that in particular, are super high in oxalates and a lot. And I give this example in my book too, about these ancestral eating patterns. We have, another good example of a high oxalate food would be blackberries, So what happens is that because our bodies never get a break anymore, because we're not eating seasonally,
right?
There's never an opportunity to detox. And there is some evidence to support that some of these chronic pain syndromes that people have are associated with oxalate toxicities, because a lot of times these folks they're eating according to like dietitian standards. They're eating great.
Yeah.
So what's gone wrong here? Well, there's never any cycling in or cycling out. There's never any detoxing the oxalates. And some of this can cause some pretty substantial problems for people.
Oh, yeah.
What is fibromyalgia? They still don't know what that is.
Yeah. And I think that has a lot to do with all this stuff, all the chemicals in these. And other things with the oxalate crystals are like almonds and kale and things like that. And that's something, nowadays, we have so much food around us here in the United States that we think we can just eat anything we want all the time. It's like even nuts. It's like even as a child, when I was growing up, the only nuts we had was around Christmas, and you would crack each nut and eat it, and then crack another nut and eat that. And now you just sit here and eat 3, 4, 5 handfuls every day for the rest of your life. It's like just because you can. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should.
But I think that's valid too. Well, and understanding the interactions within foods themselves, I think, is important too. I'll go back to the oxalate example. It used to be known that you would eat a high calcium source with something that had high in oxalates, because it actually literally pulls it through your system, so it doesn't deposit itself in your tissues.
I've never heard that.
Who talks about that?
Yeah,
Nobody.
I haven't heard it.
Yeah, no.
Calcium or high magnesium. I mean, both of those two things will have somewhat of the same effect. But so eat some cheese. Put some cheese on your kale salad.
Right. Make sure it's real cheese.
Well, yes, not cheese food.
Yeah. Almost cheese.
From A2 Milk Products is my promotion. So I don't know if you talk about that at all on your.
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
A2 Milk Products.
A2, yeah.
Huh.
Dairy tends to be considered quite pro-inflammatory, and there was a book called Devil in the Milk that brought some attention to A2 milk products. You can actually buy them locally here. Hy-Vee carries it. Now Mama Jean's, our local health food store, carries it. I think a lot of people probably just look right past it. But the A2, there's basically, if you separate milk products, on all milk products on the planet, into A1 and A2, A2 is the least inflammatory because of this protein that is in the A1 products called BCM7, beta casomorphine 7, which if you have any sort of a leaky gut, which we're all at risk for this, we know that, it's going to get into the tight junctions within your intestinal tract, and then it's going to go into your system. And that's what causes the inflammation. So A2 does not have that. Okay. It's a totally different composition. Still a dairy product, but what they find is it's less inflammatory and people just feel better. I mean, their health does not degrade when they're eating these sorts of products as opposed to the A1 milk products. The problem is that most of the cows in America are A1 now. Okay.
Right.
So if you have a company like the A2 Milk Company, which actually I think that's either out of Australia or New Zealand, I can't remember which, or both maybe actually, they're now selling it in America. Okay. So
what is the difference between A1 and A2?
Well, it's that BCM7.
That's all it is. It just had that one thing.
Whether it gets in your system. And it was funny because I remember years ago, actually, when we were working pediatrics and I was looking at a study that talked about the associations with milk intake and type 1 diabetes. And I couldn't find it again after I became aware of the A1, A2 milk thing, but I suspect that that's probably where those associations came from, because here we are talking about dairy, milk products for kids.
Right.
And kids need milk, don't they? Well, I was the pediatric dietitian. I was like, how could milk possibly be associated with type 1 diabetes?
Right.
But there it was. And then, of course, 10 years later, you don't learn about A1 versus A2 milk products. Well, 20 years later, actually, probably. And then it's like, okay, now I'm seeing the association now, so I'm understanding more what that relationship is. Now, I don't advocate for eating tons of dairy products to begin with, but if you're going to put a sprinkle of like goat cheese, real cheese, and we have a local goat cheese creamery here. It's all sheep and goat is A2. I'd say if that's what you need some cheese, that's what I would go to. Put some of that on your kale salad.
That's right.
So.
Yeah. Type 1 diabetes. I mean, there's a lot of people been thinking that that's an autoimmune disease anyway, not knowing where it came from. And I definitely think, because I was reading a lot about leaky gut syndrome and all that earlier, and there's so many chemicals that used to be or products, actually proteins even, that used to be stayed in our GI tract till we excreted it. And now there's so many of these things going in. So maybe it's this A1 milk thing that's causing, maybe people aren't lactose intolerant. Maybe it's something else that was in the milk that was doing it. So maybe if they tried with the A2, then they wouldn't be lactose intolerant anymore.
Well, it's possible. It's so hard to know. In an individual case, if you had people just try it and say, hey, I know you're lactose intolerant, see what you think about this, instead of the lactate milk that's highly processed,
Right.
That, and, as we age, a lot of us, here's a little tidbit, a lot of us over the age of 50, we have a decrease in stomach acids too. So we're just not digesting things the same way that we would otherwise. And I have a lot of people who said, well, I'm lactose intolerant. I'm like, well, are we lactose intolerant or is it this other issue? And so being able to weed through that is important. That was agricultural humor, by the way.
Oh, was it? So does it taste the same?
Does it taste the same? Yeah, it tastes just fine. Yeah. Yeah. I did the same thing like with another friend of mine that she was convinced that she was gluten intolerant. And I said, well, okay, are you gluten intolerant or are you pesticide? Your body doesn't like pesticide residues.
Right.
She's like, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, I haven't eaten pizza in forever because I just can't tolerate it. And as you know, that I have a little side thing that I do with fermented dough.
Yeah.
And I source it organically and we ferment it. And she came out and tried the pizza dough and she was fine.
Right.
So when you start looking at some of the intolerances that people have, I don't advocate for eating pizza every day, obviously. But if you're going to do something like that, make sure that that you know what the sources are and you know what went into the production of it so that you can, again, make the best choice possible. So,
right.
And it makes all the difference in the world when you're done eating and you don't feel poorly.
Right. See, and that goes along with like sourdough bread also. A lot of people, they look at the store and they say, oh, I got the sourdough bread from the store. It's like, that does not mean that sourdough bread. It's just another one of those Franken breads. And we learned.
Because they don't ferment.
Yeah, explain that.
Yeah. No,
Explain.
right. You ferment your bread for a few days. Is that how that works?
Yeah, 24,
Yeah.
at least 24 to
Yeah.
48 hours, sometimes longer, depending upon, if I don't have time, I'll do it 3 days in advance.
Right.
So basically what we're saying is the way you should do it is just get your flour and your water and put it together there and let the bacteria and all the yeast and everything that's in the environment come down and ferment that. Let it sit there and bubble for however long, I don't know, a day, 2 days. But if you look at sourdough bread and you look on the ingredient list and you see something that says yeast, made with yeast, that's not going to be real sourdough bread, because by doing the yeast, they actually bypass that fermentation process. So if you're getting sick when you're eating sourdough bread that has yeast in it, that doesn't mean you're allergic to it. Make it the right way and you'd be surprised. And then even all these gluten allergies and all these, people have the gluten allergies and they can eat real sourdough bread that does not have the yeast in it and they can get by just fine.
Right. How many times have you heard people that have traveled to Europe,
Yes.
been able to eat bread there?
Yeah.
And then come back here and then they can't eat it again. Not that we advocate for eating a whole lot of bread, but
Right.
Yeah.
you know, I've done a huge flip myself, you know, in the last couple of years, just from the standpoint of nutrition guidelines. Not that I was a big advocate of the food guide pyramid to begin with.
Yeah.
When you're an endurance athlete, you know, here you are pushing things like carbohydrate loading and things like that in order to, you know, run marathons, in order to do distance stuff. And I have done like a total 180 in the last bit, just because, you know, it is so important to be able to mobilize your fat stores. And I've been blessed with, you know, a metabolism that is so flexible and can do whatever I need it to do, which you know, it's not necessarily the case for everybody, but understanding that the benefits of mobilizing fat and the health benefits associated with it. You know, we were talking right before this about, you know, autophagy and basically breaking down those old cells to make sure that your body is, again, it's cycling through and getting rid of the waste on its own, as opposed to this, you know, burning tons of carbohydrate that is actually what I would just call a dirty burner.
Yeah, and it is.
Yeah.
So many free radicals when you burn carbs for energy source.
As opposed to fat, which tends to be more of a clean burner, and you actually get more ATP out of it than you would out of carbohydrate anyway. So,
a lot. And, you know, that's the other thing for people to know. Well, when we're talking about mobilizing your fat and using your fat for your energy source, like we have since the beginning of time, we only started using glucose as our primary energy source since the food manufacturers came and started telling everybody that's what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And if you've listened to any of my podcasts, I've talked about this multiple times, but just in case you haven't, when your insulin levels are high, and glucose in your blood is what makes your insulin levels go high. When your insulin levels are high, you cannot burn fat. It is physiologically impossible. When your insulin level is high, it forces your body to store fat. When your insulin levels are low, it's exact opposite. That's how you burn fat. So the way that you can go and you can mobilize fat in your bloodstream and use that for your good energy source, and then fat's used for all kinds of other important things in your body also. Carbohydrate, glucose is only used for one thing, and that should be fight or flight energy. But keep your insulin levels low by intermittent fasting, time restricted eating, staying away from carbohydrates, eat mainly animal meat, animal fat. And if you want some fruits and vegetables for like a condiment a little bit, that's fine. But the whole key when you're eating is keep your insulin levels low, mobilize your fat. And that, you know, people are saying, oh, I wish I could just burn my fat while I was just sitting here laying down. I was like, well, that's how you do it. Keep the carbs low, keep your insulin levels low. And that's exactly what your body does do. Just like every night when you go to bed, it burns the fat out of your fat cells and uses that for energy and for everything else. So one simple, easy way, don't eat carbs so you don't get your insulin levels up and you can use your fat. There, I'm done. There's my soapbox.
Well said. Yeah, it's pretty important.
Did you want to go more into autophagy? Is there anything in particular that you've learned that you think was really interesting to let people know?
Well, I think the main thing is understanding that it's really important to get rid of like cellular debris. And I think they're still beginning to really understand from the scientific side of things about why it's so important. I think the main message here should be that, you know, if we get back to the way that we used to eat, you know, here we have access to food 24/7 whenever we need it, which is not the case even less than 100 years ago. Right. You know, but this easy access to food is quite literally, because of our industrialized food system, is quite literally the thing that's making us ill. Right. So when we look at it from that perspective, then, you know, this is like the best scenario possible. And that's how I'm going to look at this. We have so much access to food. We can do whatever we want with it.
Right.
Okay, we are not limited in the same ways that we were in the 1940s,
Yep.
where everybody had to have a garden. But I'm here to tell you, I think more people should get out there and do that. Get out into the garden, start relating to your food quite differently. And what you're going to find is that you want to eat healthier when you have a relationship with your food, or you have a relationship with your farmer. And I really believe that, redeveloping food systems is going to be absolutely essential for our health moving forward, because
It's got to be.
while, it seems like it started this conversation with this, which is that, everything is connected, but it really does. We vote with our forks every day. The reason why these other foods are available is because people pay money for them.
Right. And that's on purpose. The food manufacturers make their food so you will be hungry. They do not care about your health. They don't. Just because they call it food doesn't mean it's nutritious for the body, and it is not if it's made by them. So they're sitting there and they know what's going to keep you eating their food is they want you very hungry all the time. So they give food that has no nutrient value at all. So all your body knows is I don't have nutrients. So I'm still hungry. I need to get more. Then it has all this sugar and high fructose corn syrup in, which also makes you more hungry, makes you eat more. We've already talked about the vegetable and seed oils, and those are extremely toxic to your body. Mm-hmm. And that's all that food manufacturers do, because it's not about your health. It's about their bottom line. They want to make sure that everybody who is investing in their company is going to make lots of money. So please don't be. So when you see all these things, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and make sure you eat your cereals and grains and rice and pastas and breads. And it is a lie. And that is what's killing us. And you've got to realize to get your information from somewhere else. Like us.
Like us.
And you also have a podcast with a friend of yours.
I do.
Yeah. What's
talk
the
about
name of that? Yeah. Tell us about it.
Well, it's called The Well-Fed Neighbor. And really, it's just promoting local food systems, all the relationships around that, and just, sharing stories. I do it with a girlfriend of mine who has a huge garden and a greenhouse. She's my partner in food crime. Sarah Waddle is her name. And, we do it what I call cafe style. We just sit and talk about, we pick a subject, sometimes try to choose something like a national event that's occurred and how we should relate to that as consumers. There's as an example, we addressed some of the CO2 issues and the narrative around that, or there was a nitrogen spill up in Iowa. How does that affect us down here? That sort of thing. Just so people can tie things together and see them as things that are connected with our food system, because we are so connected with the internet and, social media, but we are so disconnected sometimes from the cause and effect of how these things actually work, that we really try to address those things in a very relaxed style. Mm-hmm. And we are a little opinionated, but that's why people start their own podcast.
That's exactly right.
Right.
I'm not. Now, did you say it's called Well-Fed Neighbor or
Well-Fed
The
Neighbor?
Well-Fed?
Yeah.
Just Well-Fed Neighbor.
The Well-Fed Neighbor. We're just on Podbean right now. We've been kind of getting our podcast legs under us. I've had other people suggest that we should put it on Spotify, which we may do at some point, but there's no official plans to do that. But I think it's fun because I'm sorry.
You have to have like the app Podbean. I don't know.
Yeah, there is an app associated with it. I don't think there's a charge for it, but yeah, it's not. It's one of the ones that you can't be deplatformed on, which is why we're there, because we're, we speak our minds.
That's good.
Can't be deplatformed yet.
I think I would consider it a privilege if it actually happened.
Yeah. That's right. We have gotten so big.
Right. And I said something really important.
That's right.
That's right.
No, I think that's awesome. We just learned about that a couple of weeks ago. So
we have a good time with it.
Oh, I bet.
We had the last couple, we've had people on. We had Sarah's daughter that is doing her own urban homesteading and just some of what she was doing with that, just to share real life stories for people who are trying to do it. And then we had our chef friend on that has had 5-course meals centered around local food systems, so she had the Wagyu beef farmer, one of the local ones, although technically that's not possible because it's like a protective designation of origin sort of thing. But anyway, he's producing his own beef locally. So she had the farmer come talk to the group. A 5-course meal. And so it was really fun to just hear his story about why he was passionate about what he's doing. And these are the things that connect us back with our food that we just don't do anymore. It used to be that the butcher lived down the street, It used to be that, you shared garden space. And here in this area, there used to be over 100 tomato canneries that none of them exist. But as you drive down the roadside, you can see some of them still. They still exist. The infrastructure is still there. Sometimes it's been turned into something else, but we don't do food anymore. We go to the grocery store. So reconnecting with that.
Yeah, now that's why people have to do biohacking, try to figure that out. Have you done anything with that?
Biohacking? No, never. I'm going to say, because I put that on my questions. I'm going to say that I probably have 2 biohacks for the year, but they're not going to be what you'd think. Okay. One is fasting. I think is super important for people to understand more. Whoops, my dog's chasing a wasp. Did you
say fat fasting, or did you mess up and you just been saying?
Yeah, I think I hiccuped because my dog jumped. Fasting, yes. I think is super important.
Yes,
in all sorts of different forms, and it just depends on what you're managing, what your body is managing. Starting with an intermittent fasting, I think is a great way to just get started with it. When I work with other folks, I tell them to start there because you don't just jump into a 3-day fast.
Right.
You just don't do that to yourself.
The longer fasts really aren't proven to be that much better. Even if you can do a 24-hour fast, those seem to be just as good as these 3 and 4 day fast people are doing.
Right. So, just getting started though, there's a lot of people who just eat 1 meal a day sort of thing. Again, if you're not used to doing that, I don't recommend it because your body's going to get really mad at you and probably at us.
Yeah. I tell everybody try to eat, if they could stick to only eating 2 meals, if they could do that in a 6 to 8 hour time period, and don't make breakfast one of those meals.
You want to say hi.
And you can't ignore her either because she's so big. Yeah, that. And then for biohacks, I tell people just, start a garden, grow something, grow anything. Just start relating to your food differently, even if it's, some rosemary to throw on your steak.
Right.
I love putting rosemary on a steak, or one of my favorites on steak also is just a chimichurri sauce. So cilantro with some parsley and garlic, and just with tons of olive oil on it is the bomb.
Yeah.
It is the total bomb.
Yeah. We love olive oil. And coconut oil, avocado, and chimichurri. Yeah, I guess we love it all. And that's what's crazy. People, and I know it's just a cop out there talking about, it's so expensive to eat healthy, and how you know what's healthy is like, it is not. If you look in the grocery carts of most of these people that are going to the grocery store, they have no food in it. It's all junk. It's all pop, crackers, cookies, frozen pizzas. There's no actual food, meaning nutrition in there. It's like if you would just empty all that stuff out and use that same money and actually buy nutritious things, you'll be a lot better off. By the way, I was going to ask you, and I really don't know this. Have you looked anything into this appeal that Bill Gates is wanting to spray on all our fruits and vegetables now?
Just a little bit, anything. I'm a little opinionated with Bill Gates' stuff.
Oh, so am I.
That's how we are.
Go back to computers and leave our health alone.
And he's partnered with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but what's that, Bragg's, the vinegar?
Oh, yes.
The apple cider vinegar. He's partnered with whoever purchased that. What's her name? It's a
singer. Yeah. Katy Perry.
No.
Yeah, Katy Perry. Yeah, Katy Perry. He's partnered with her to do, I don't know what.
More horrible things.
Who knows what?
See, that's the deal. Just this appeal. And I guess they used to have they had to have a label on it to say that they put this on. Appeal it's a chemical-based product that they're spraying all over the fruits and vegetables now because they want them to stay ripe longer is what the deal is. And they're promoting it, saying that this is, it's all safe. It's all vegetable products. Bull crap. It is not safe. It's more chemicals. And now they say, they don't even have to sticker each of the fruits. If they just have a sign somewhere in the store saying they sprayed their fruits and vegetables with this stuff. So it goes back to the same thing. The safest thing is do not buy food from a grocery store. Just don't do it. If you can buy your meat from a local farmer and get you a freezer, they aren't that expensive. And you could buy a quarter of a beef, an eighth of a beef, whatever, go in with friends and buy it. But if you can do that, and instead of going to the supermarket to buy your fruits and vegetables, go to your local farmers, go to these
farmers market.
Yeah, the farmers markets that are out here. You're going to be so much better off, and just save the grocery stores for I don't know, pesticides, whatever else you'd get from a store.
Well, let's put the grocery stores out of business.
Yeah, that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do.
No, I agree 100%. I mean, in order to do that, that would relocalize our food supply entirely.
Yep.
But people have to rethink what's important to them. I mean, the addiction to the industrialized food is real. They are coming up. They have combinations of food ingredients that keep you wanting more of it.
Yeah.
They are well known to be doing this.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you look at it from that perspective, I tell people it's okay to be pissed off that this has been going on and you don't know it.
Yeah.
The only way to change that, though, is to just, start thinking about it differently. So if so, then what are you going to eat?
Right.
And it needs to go back to exactly what you just talked about. And that's what my book is about, basically, is why it is that regeneration of the soil, I called it restoring in the title, but it's soil regeneration and relocalizing the food system is so important for our health. I don't believe that it can be done without it. Personally, I know my own health journey, and we've all had hiccups in our health. Even when you're paying close attention to it, there are things that just happen until you have to weed through that and figure out, okay, if so, then what's my next step? And then the option of not doing anything, from my perspective, it just doesn't exist. Okay?
No, it doesn't. You will be becoming sick, and you will be on meds and hospitalizations and all the other crap that goes along with it.
Yep. And your doctor, I mean, that's the thing, though. I mean, sometimes medications are needed, but I tell people, even with my side consulting, I said, we're going to start here. And yes, we may be doing some supplementation, but the thing is my goal to just get you eating well and get you off of this.
Right.
I don't want you taking supplements for the rest of your life. And half of the supplements don't even have in them what people say, what you're being told is in them, which is why, I always go for that third-party review to make sure that what you're being told you're actually getting.
Right.
And then we'll talk about how to eat right. I added a food to my diet this year.
Okay,
What's that?
Mustard greens.
Why?
They're really high in, if I can say the word right, isothiocyanates, I think is how it's said. So it's really detoxifying. It's a great detoxifying food. So I include it in, if I have a salad, I include it in my salad, and I actually grow it in my yard now. So I can.
I figured you were
What's it taste like? You have a strong taste or?
Mustard.
And I like mustard. As far as a condiment, that's probably one that we will use sometimes.
Yeah.
I have 16 plants in the yard, and then I have them out at the farm too. They're everywhere now. There's no avoiding mustard greens.
Well, good deal. You'll have to bring us some.
Yeah.
I will.
Okay.
I will. I pulled 3 cucumbers out of the garden this morning. I was so proud of myself. I was all giddy. I was like, oh, cool. This is so much fun.
You're a weirdo.
You're a weirdo, yeah.
A little kid I'm a little kid walking out in the yard, in my bare feet. And I'm like, oh, look, cucumbers.
Yeah, that's the other thing, grounding. We've been trying to do a lot more of that too. And we take our shoes off as soon as we get in the house now just to walk around. I know that's not grounding, but that's also helps, just getting out of the shoes, but going around, walking all around the yard and our bare feet and everything. I just love trying to get back to nature. We really are all one. We're all just energy that's just feeding off each other. And you got to decide what kind of energy you want to be feeding off of,
Truly.
And we want to be feeding off your type of energy.
Well, we've known each other for a very long time.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, 30,
Shoot, it's been
30 years more
or more, 32, 33 years. I don't know how long we've known each other.
Long time. I mean, I started working at the hospital 29 years ago, so at least 29 years.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, thank you for being on our
thanks again.
episode.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I'm going to show your book.
Yeah, there's the book again. It's
And we'll
called
have it-
Destination Real Food.
Yeah, and we'll have it linked below. We'll have that.
Yeah, in the
linked
show
below,
notes.
So, yep. Have
That would be awesome. And I would also like to invite folks, if it's okay, to my my Health is Local page on Facebook. I mean, if you just put in Health is Local, I put some videos on there about growing food, just kind of how I think about things on a day-to-day basis, because about every day I'm like, oh, well, I should share that. Because relating to food when we have not been growing our own and we're not used to looking at it from the system standpoint is for some reason it's I want to say it's super confusing to people when it's actually one of the most simplest things, but it's just because we haven't been doing it.
Right.
So just putting that additional perspective on, how to do things. I have a lot of folks who just look at me and they're like, I don't know how to grow food. I'm like, yeah, well, neither did I until I did it.
Yeah. And then you love it. You get addicted to it and you just want to do
It's
more.
so much fun.
Yeah.
And I have my soil regeneration project that's going on in my canoe after the house got hit by straight line winds. I said, we're just going to regenerate soil in this canoe that's now just broken. And so I drilled extra holes in the bottom of it. And I just started throwing stuff from the yard and my waste from, the table waste, because for the most part, I only eat organically. So I've been throwing it all in there, and it's actually getting to the point that I think I might actually be able to grow in it in the fall. And I bought no soil whatsoever. And so I just want people to know how easy it is to do with just some advanced planning and recognizing that, somebody, when they put all that stuff in a bag that you buy when you go to the lawn and garden store, is doing just this, which you can do in your own backyard. And it's not super complicated, but it does require patience and time and a lot of microbes, which we haven't talked about, but that's okay. That's a whole other podcast.
That's right. That'd be another one. I love microbes.
The good kind, anyway.
The good kind, yeah. And they're making everybody think that all microbes are bad. It's like, oh my gosh,
No.
we would be dead without microbes.
Right? Literally.
I know, literally. It's crazy.
Yep.
Well, Angela, is there any last parting advice you want to give, or things? If you can just do this one thing, do this.
I would say just remember that your health is a journey. We all run up against something that kind of stops us in our tracks. And, I had a friend that was having surgery this morning, and we all have something that stops us in our tracks. Just remember that it is a journey. And sometimes when things happen, these are actually blessings in disguise that tell us, okay, something's going to change. Embrace that opportunity and decide to do it differently. Okay.
Yep.
Because past that, there's so many things that you will hear from 16 different places about what you're supposed to be doing. And you are uniquely in charge of your own body.
Yeah.
It's not the same for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being on here again. And podcast friends, thank you so much again for listening. Have a fantastic week. And remember, as always, make simple, healthy choices to live a quality life. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button below and be sure to tell someone else who may want to change their health path as well. And don't forget, you can also purchase my book, Your Plate is Your Fate, on Amazon or Audible. And if you do, please leave a review.